Uh, okay. Merge and center A1 to D1.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Give it a title cell style.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Do
Oh,
you know why my Excel version, like everything was grayed out when I tried to like see how easy it was for you to center and merge, like it was just an option in your buttons or whatever, like but all of my stuff is like grayed out. So like I had to like just find a different way to do it. It just took me longer. I was able to do it, but like all my stuff is grayed out.
okay, that is a different issue. So I would have to probably see what you have, but does your at the top here, does yours say anything like unlicensed product or anything like that?
No, because like I downloaded it straight from the school and there was nothing on it that said like, that this was a private copy or anything like that.
Right. I'm only asking that because they made an update recently that actually caused some issues, and that would
Oh,
happen. So, yeah, like it actually happened. The update happened yesterday. So it's like if you're working on it yesterday, then that could be the issue of why that happened. Um,
okay.
yeah. Were you working on it yesterday, and that's when that occurred?
Um, it was actually the day before I was working on it.
Okay, so that probably is something different then. So you should see everything should be available as long as you are if you have a cell selected. If you are
Mhm.
inside of a cell, so notice how I'm inside of the cell.
Yeah.
Notice how everything is grayed out now, which makes sense if you think about it, because when you're inside the cell, you are typing something in here, right? So if
Mhm.
you're typing something in here, you're not going to be merging and centering because there's nothing to merge or center while you're entering data.
Yeah.
When you have the cell selected, then you can make these changes.
Okay.
So that's possibly your issue. I would love for you to. I'm assuming that you may have Excel open now. I would love if you don't. I would love for you to open it and just give that a try right now. Because if that was not the issue, we need to figure out what's going on because it could just be a Microsoft issue on your machine.
Let me try.
Yeah. All right. And while you're doing that, I'm going to continue on by just going through the directions here. So in A2, type current points. Okay. And merge and center A2 to D2. Give it a heading 1 style. A3, assignment name. Okay. So I know some of you got confused with this part here because it looks as if assignment name is in column B, but it's not. Remember we talked about when you type things in that if you go outside of that column width, it may extend over. And so you can correct that by increasing the column's width. So what I did was I just double clicked on that boundary there to do so. If you wanted to drag it yourself, you could have also done that. But in B3, just type total points received. So I'm going to type total points received. And then for C3, total points possible. Okay. And so this part was all just data entry for you to fill out, for you to enter in things from cell A1 down to C3. So once all that was done, the next thing asks for you, go to your grades page and record the needed data in the appropriate cells for 5 of your graded assignments. This data should go in cells A4 through CA. So, well, if you're not sure what to put in A4, well, looking at what's right above it, it says assignment name. And so that's the example I gave, right? So you could put in it was like Gmail and Canvas, I think was the name of the assignment. What's some other assignments you all did? Ergonomics, technological experiences. You guys
That makes sense now. I didn't realize like how, I guess like the directions like threw me off of like how it was asking like the things to do. I guess you were just like telling us to put the data in, but I'm very like, I don't know, like directions have to be super specific for me sometimes to like get it. But now that you're like kind of showing us and saying like, oh yeah, assignment name, so these would be your assignments, like I get it now. So thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thanks for telling me that too, because you'll notice. Well, all the assignments I've tried to give it to be more generic for you to be able to add your own creative flair to it. And so in the future assignments, before we end the class, make sure that you have that clarified, because that will happen. And like I will step off a lot more from detail, like even the next assignment, for instance. There's a video to accompany with an example in the next assignment because of that, because I'm stepping off a lot more by saying, I'm not going to tell you to put this, this, this. So I also did it this way because for some people in this class, it's maybe their very first time ever going into Excel. And it's not a prerequisite to already have Excel knowledge. However, it would make it easier for some of the things that we will do in this course. So great. Were there any other questions with this assignment? All right. One thing that, okay, no question. Okay, so question that came up just now was with the conditional formatting. Do you have to do all three? Yes, I expect all three. Even if you have 100% on everything, if everything you have is a 90 or above, does not matter. It says to use conditional formatting on these cells for less than 70%, between 70 and 90, and greater than 90. The reason for that is, let's say, just thinking of this as actually utilizing Excel. So I'm just going to put some numbers in here just so we have something to go off of. And this is not going to like that. Okay, so just to give an example, yours is different, right? Because you guys are doing percents. These are not percents, as you can see. If I want to say, look at values that are greater than 90, when I do let me go back and do that again. When I go to conditional formatting, which is in the Home tab in the Styles group, I look at highlight cell rules. If I want to get greater than 90, and it said to use something in regards to green or something else that you like. Okay, there it is. If I want to do between two values, so I said between 70 and 90, set for it to be something with yellow or whatever you like. And then if I want less than 70, said it has something to do with red. So it's very clear to see all three here, but some of you may have, yeah, actually, some of you may have everything all the same. All three conditional formats are still on all of these cells. And as I go in and make adjustments just to test to see if you actually utilize these, I will be able to see if you did or not. So realistically, if you were to use this in real life, you may put all three conditional formattings maybe on like your grade in a class. And then that way it'll automatically adjust as you do more assignments and your grade would change, right? You could use this to maybe give yourself some type of flag like, uh-oh, I'm failing, or uh-oh, I'm in the middle area, I don't want to be there, or oh, I'm green, so I'm doing well here. We use this in real life in many different ways. I mentioned at some point in this class how I've used Excel in some of my own homeworks, and some data analytics that I've done to detect changes. I think it was this class I was mentioning, maybe not. Well, I'll just mention it again, even if it was or not. Taking record of the temperatures, daily average temperature in Phoenix, Arizona, and looking at the dates of those. So I was detecting when a change occurred. So trying to find the unofficial end of summer, so to speak. So I was detecting when changes occurred. To do that, I just used conditional formatting so that I could see a difference between the previous day and the next day. And if it was greater than a certain amount, I made it red. I didn't have that much. I had 20 years of data. So, I mean, that's still a lot, but 20 years of data for 365, 66 days a year. So that it's not, I'm saying it's not that much, but some of you might be saying, no, that's a lot. It kind of is actually now I think about it. But imagine that you got 20 times, so you have about a little under 8,000 different files, and I'm looking at just the ones that are red. So by me being able to do conditional formatting, I could quickly notice when a certain change that I was looking for occurred. If those values got changed because someone recorded the wrong temperatures on certain dates, or maybe when I got stuff from weather.com, they were doing an update, and so with their latest update, they had more accurate information. I need to all of a sudden make changes, or I did it for Phoenix. Let's say I decided to go do it for Death Valley, or I decided to go do it for a random city in Wisconsin. I don't have to change the conditional formats because they're already there. I just have to change the numbers that go in here, and the color will automatically change on its own. So that's the real power with conditional formatting. I don't have to change the formats because they're already set in stone based off what was entered into that cell. Okay. So I hope that clears up the reason why I want all three there, and also how you would use this in a professional sense. So are there any other questions in regards to this assignment or anything that we've learned so far with Excel? So we're going to look at some more today and over the next couple of weeks. So feel free to open up with anything. And I love talking about Excel. So. Okay. So if anything does come up or a question pops in mind, please feel free to just shout out and say so, or put it in the chat. So today we're going to look at more with formulas. So I already had you all use a formula within your last assignment where you use that equals. And so whenever you begin with an equals, you are entering a formula in Excel. Some of your formulas will involve built-in functions within Excel as well. Most common one that people use is to take the sum of things. There's a function built in called SUM for sum. But there are a couple others as well. We're going to take a look at some of those. So per usual, there's some content from GCF Learn Free that you can go to if you would like to get further instruction or supplemental instruction. But let's take a look at what that actually looks like. So yeah, I'm just going to take some random numbers here. 94. Okay. And let's say I have this column of numerical data and I want to actually take the sum of these values. Well, what I can do in Excel is I can use a formula. I said you begin a formula with it. You can then type in whatever you want and it will evaluate this formula. So if I wanted to, I could say 90 plus 54 plus 67 plus 45. Cool. So I have the sum of these numbers. Well, let's say, these are grades and then you resubmit and this one gets regraded and now it's a 75. Well, that didn't change though. that one still says 256, even though I am taking the sum of these, and even though we changed one of those values. Well, okay, that's okay. I can go in here and just change this guy 75. What if this keeps occurring? Do I need to keep going in and making this change? Well, that would be silly, right? And imagine like with what I was talking about with my thing, I had almost 8,000 rows of data. Why would I ever want to keep entering in for each one, right? Well, the power of using spreadsheet software is that I don't have to do that. One thing I can do is when I create this formula, I can reference. I can reference each one of these by, say, clicking on it. When I do, it gives me the cell name or cell address. There is a difference between name and address. An address is based off the column and the row. So this is A1 because it's in column A, row 1. Name, I could name it something and then it will be used throughout. I think I showed you all an example of that on Monday. If not, I can show you one. It's not a part of your curriculum, but I think it's kind of cool because it allows you to do some cool things with your data. So, but I can click on it and get that. If I want to, I know where it is. I could actually just type it in here. So A2, notice I didn't even capitalize it, but it still recognized it as, oh, that's right here. We also get this cool color coordination between them. So I can reference that. The blue one is this blue one up here. This red one is this red one here. Um, yeah. So I could do either one of those. I can click or I can type it out. It does not matter. So now there we go. We got that 264. So, that was great. It's a lot better now, right? If I go in here and I make this change here, it automatically updates the sum here, this total I'm taking. Well, that's fine and dandy for, if you had to do 2 of them or 4 of them, maybe even, or maybe even 10 of them. But can you imagine if we're doing that for about 8,000? You'd probably ask for a full-time job doing it because it would take you forever. So there must be a easier way, and there is. So Microsoft knows that there are certain functions that people use all the time. And so what they have done is there is the creation of this function here. It's called sum, S-U-M. And what you do is, yes, go ahead.
Oh, I didn't mean to actually unmute myself. I didn't realize the space bar didn't. Sorry.
No, you're good. So what you do here is you can enter in the cells that you want to take the sum of, and you can enter them in separately, A1, A2, A3, and so on. Or you could give it a cell range. So recall from Monday that a cell range starts at the upper left corner, colon down to the bottom right corner. So in this case, A1 to A4. Now I typed that out. I didn't have to type it out. I could have also selected it. Okay. But either way, there you go. Now I can take the sum of all these values very easily. I was able to select it or just type where my left corner begins and my bottom right corner ends, which is even faster, in my opinion. So that makes it a lot easier to do. This is so commonly used that they actually added a command to make it even faster. So I just increased my screen so you guys can see it, probably how you're used to seeing it. The way I had it before, notice how some of the commands, the icons change. That's because of the amount of things that are being displayed and the amount of screen that I have available for it. So when I maximize it, I can see everything probably in the normal state that you are seeing on your own personal screen, possibly. But because the sum is the most commonly used function in Excel, in the Home tab, the Home tab has all the things that are most commonly used. In the Home tab in the editing group, we'll see a command known as Autosum. And when you click on it, it actually looks around it where wherever the cell that you have selected. So we have 55 selected. it looks around that area and says, are there some numbers here that I can add up? In this case, there are. So when I click that, it automatically puts that sum function there, and I press enter, and it's done. There's also a keyboard shortcut. If you press Alt and then equals, it'll do the same thing. Okay. All right. So because of how common that is, they decided to say, what else is common? What else is a common function that people do in Excel or within spreadsheets? And so they listed them within here. So if you click the drop down here, you'll see average. You'll see count numbers, which will give you a count of how many numbers you have. If you had text in here, you could count for a certain text as well. Maximum, so it gives you the max value as you see here, and then minimum. And then they have a link to more functions, just in case you wanted to use more. So if I wanted to know what's the maximum score I had, or if these are scores, maybe I want to find the average, I click that, comes up automatically. So I got an average of a 64. I need to work on some things. All right. So Autosum makes it easier to get some of these functions because they're commonly used. Now, you can also look at some of your functions within the Formula tab. So tabs are up here. So see, I said formulas. Oh, there it is. I click on formulas. Notice here that Autosum is also listed here in the function library because it's a function. So this, I think, is a good time to define a function. Some of you may be familiar when using when programming of what a function is. And so what a function is it is a special method or set of rules that takes arguments or parameters, so things to use within the function, and it does some calculation or some formulation or evaluation, and it puts out a result. So that's what a function is. So it has some special name, it takes in some arguments or parameters, and then it puts out a result by doing some evaluation or calculation. Cool thing about this is that in the past, we would write in the functions that we wanted to use. So just like I showed earlier with the equal, so for instance, if I wanted to find the maximum value here, I would say equal max, but I would have to know that it's the max function to use, and then I could select or type in my information and get the max value. Well, not everyone knows that it should be called max. I can't tell you how many times I've told students to find the max value, and they actually either ask me directly or they spend time Google searching how to find the maximum value in Excel. And in my mind, I just told them to use the max function, but that wasn't clear enough. And so I changed by saying that the max function is max, M-A-X. But a lot of them were doing this. They would type like, oh, most of them make sense. You know, sum, you just type sum. So max, oh, that's the largest. So they'll go in here and they'll type large. And as you can see, there is a large function, except it doesn't work the same way that people would expect. So they were getting things wrong. Same thing with like minimum, they would type in smallest, and then they wouldn't even see a function. And so Microsoft understands this too. And so what they have done to make this somewhat easier is they've kind of logged where these functions would go under. So for instance, if I'm doing, let's see, we're doing average, I can look under math and trig. I don't see an average here, but maybe I know that it's also called a mean. And if I go under statistical, I may see average now. So I can use that average function. And not only does it pre-fill it in, which won't always happen, but it also gives us this nice little wizard that actually makes it easier to see what's happening. So it's saying average. I can type in some cells. Notice what it does here. It tells me these are the current values that are in those cells. It also tells me a result. It also tells me what this function is supposed to do. It is also telling me what it is expecting me to put in. It even gives me a link to get help on this function. So these dialog boxes, which we call a wizard, because wizards make everything easy, make life easier, right? Just like Harry Potter, except for the whole, Death Eaters thing. But life was easier with a wizard. So these can make it easier to use these functions. So that's what they're here for. Um, Personally, I still go back to old school. I'll just type it in and see what happens. But one other thing I do like, which I have started to not like as recently, because when I saw it, I thought it was very helpful. But I've noticed that more people that I work with that try to use it doesn't help them out as much. But there's an insert function command here, and what it is supposed to be for a way for you to kind of, I'm not sure what the name of the function is, so let me just type in kind of like a search here for it to tell me what could possibly be the function I want. So for instance, I don't have any idea how to find the median. I could say median. Oh, cool. There's a median function. Um, I want to count text. Oh, there's a count function. And there's a text function, but that converts a value to a text. That's not what I want. Count A. This counts the number of cells in a range that are empty. No. LEN returns the number of characters. No. Count F. Oh, this could work. Count the number of cells within that meet a certain condition, maybe a certain or whatever. But notice I had to go through like 5 of them to kind of see which one got what I wanted. But it still helped, right? So that's another thing that they added to make things easier for people to find functions, because there are hundreds of functions here. Like, look at this. This is just the financial stuff. Here are the logical ones. Text stuff, date time, so much more that you can even download that people have created. Side note, if any of you are taking any math classes or will take any in the future, the Math and Trig library is probably a good one to check out just to see what's available there for you to do. Most people, I know there's some people in here that are engineers. I'll tell you the story of an electrical engineer in Arizona. He would hire students, grad students from ASU that recently graduated or maybe in their master's to work for the state of Arizona. And he stopped doing that and he preferred to go to community colleges and get interns and train them up. And his reason for this was because he would hire people and they would bring their TI calculators, which some were stolen, he said, because they were the yellow ones that you get from the schools. So if you have it in the yellow ones, make sure you return them to the school because people know. But they would come to work with their TI calculators and do these calculations. And he would say, what are you doing with that? Oh, I'm trying to do these calculations here so I can, give my results to you all. And then he would look at them and say, why don't you put that in Excel? And he said that some of the recent grads, new hires, would laugh at him, saying, why would I use Excel to do calculations? Because it does it for you, and I can send a document by email. I can't send you my TI calculator to say, see what I got as a result. And they laughed at him still and said, you can't do differential equations on that. You can't do calculus on that. You can't find the slope of a line on that. All these different things. And so he created like a mini course for them to go through for training to show that you could do all of those things in Excel and more. So if you're taking any math classes, I say all that. If you're taking any math classes, or if you are an engineer, it is very important to kind of learn Excel. And I believe that Dr. Weitzel does a good job of explaining that to his students. Those of you that are in accounting or in the business majors, you probably have seen a lot of spreadsheets being used in your classes already. And it's also a part of your curriculum that you have to take a spreadsheet course. That's part of the reason why your CIS105 is a part of that as well, because we do look at spreadsheets. Okay. So, um, let's look at something else with this. So I'm going to add in some other numbers here. And I'm going to go back in and add our sum. Oops. I'm going to do it the other way. All right, so I have this other one here, this other list of numbers, and I want to take the sum of that as well. So yeah, I could just go over here and press Alt equals, but we can use what I had you do in your homework previously, the fill handle, in order to copy over the formula. When I copied over the formula, though, I got a different value. I didn't get 256, I got 254. So something had to have gone wrong. Well, let's see what went wrong. Oh, the first one's taking sum from A1 to A4, and I copied over the formula, I thought, but this one went to B1, B4, which honestly is better for me because that's exactly what I was going to do in the end. I was just trying to copy it over and then make the change, but it somehow did this for me already. That's because Excel will always try to help you, always. If it does something, though, that does not mean it's correct, so you want to check to make sure it does it correctly. This is one of those things. And this is known as a relative reference. And so what Excel does is when you copy over a formula that involves different cell addresses, if I were to, in this case, I dragged it to the right, it expects that all of these cell addresses will also move to the right. So since they're in A1 to A4, which is here, when I move to the right, all of those would go to B1, B4. And that is why this function now says B1 to B4. If I kept going and copying over, it would also move. And so now it goes to C1, C4, D1, D4, or D1, D4. Okay. Same thing would happen if I move down. So it's A1, A4 to start. If I move down 1, all of these would move down 1. So I'm going to illustrate that now here. So it was at A1 to A4. Now it's at A2 to A5. So the direction in which I copied it is the direction in which these cell addresses move. Okay. And so that becomes very important because sometimes you don't want the cell address to move. I'll give you an example. So I'm going to insert a new row above this. By the way, to insert a row, you could select the row, you right click, and click insert. Whenever you insert anything in Excel, it will always put it before what is selected. So in this case, because I'm inserting a row, it will put it before the current selected row. So it'll put it before row 1. If I did it a column, so say if I selected column D and I click insert, which can also be found on the home tab in the cells group, it would insert it before it. So there will be a new column D and column D will become E. Just so that you guys could see that happen. Okay, I just wanted to explain that. But let's just say that these were some scores and I wanted to see what the percentage of the scores was, percent of the total score was. Okay. So from a math class, I may know that a percent is a part of a whole. Excuse me. So a percent is a part of a whole. Well, if a percent is a part of a whole, then I want to take this portion or this part and divide by the whole. So the total that I had here. Okay. And so I get a percentage as a decimal and I can make it a percent style. Right. I can even increase the number of decimals if I want to here. So I can see more. 2% is usually good enough for most people. So now that I've done that, I already know because we've just talked about references. If I were to copy this down, this should work, right? Should have no issue. It should realize exactly what I want it to do. And I do that and I get this. You guys call these hashtags still? Is that still a thing? Yes?
Yeah, it's still a thing.
Okay, cool. All right. So you guys get these hashtags. Whenever you see those, that is Excel telling you that there is an error somewhere. If you see a bunch of them, let's see if I can make this show up. If you see multiple of them, I guess I should say multiple, but if you see more than one going continuously, the quote unquote error is a column with error. So you can just double click it and or increase the size to what you like in order to fix that quote unquote error. But these are real errors. I probably shouldn't say real errors, but these are more substantial errors. And they will usually give you a clue based off of the words that follow, right? Because it's how those hashtags work, right? They tell you what follows. So Twitter wasn't the first place to have hashtags, it was Excel. Shout out to Bill Gates. But what does this mean here? It says div/0. I think that many of you probably would be able to interpret what that means. Anyone have any ideas of what that could possibly be? Yes, you can't divide by 0. So you went a little further. So the error says divide by 0, and Michaela actually went ahead and just straight up said it. Yeah, you can't divide by 0, which is correct. You are not allowed to divide by 0. If you want to think about it conceptually, you're trying to divide things into 0 groups. How many groups would you get? You'd be like, what? How would you do that? You can't. So it's not defined. It's infinity. It's not defined. There's a difference. Actually, infinity is not defined either, but so don't do that. Okay. Don't say it's 0 either. Don't put it in your calculator, and if your calculator gives you an answer, you should probably throw your calculator away. And before you do so, write to the company that made it and tell them you programmed this wrong. So, yeah, you can't divide by 0. So that's the error we get here. And the cool thing about errors in Excel is they will give you these little green triangles in the upper left-hand corner, which you can use for error checking, which we won't go over in this class. But it's kind of cool. If you go to the Formulas tab, you'll see Formula Auditing. For those of you that don't know, some of you may have, actually, I think at least one of you wants a career in auditing. What that is where you look at information, look at data, look at results that people have found for a company or for an organization or for a job, and you check it to see if it's accurate, to see if they're saying if they're doing exactly what they're saying they're doing, to see if they did their calculations correct, if their books balance out how they're supposed to. Well, you can use error checking, and in this case, if you hover over this little sign here, it actually will tell us that the formula of the function used is dividing by 0 or empty cells. And so upon further investigation by me actually looking in the formula bar, I see that it got to B3, which is correct. It should go to B3, but it divided by B7, which is not correct. I wanted it to divide by B6, not B7. And then the next one went to B8. And so that's the issue, which I probably should have known beforehand, because remember, when we drag down, the cell addresses also move down. But thankfully, there's a way for me to tell Excel, you better stay in your spot. And the way I do that is actually, so I want B6 to stay in its spot when I copy it down. So to do so, I'm going to put these dollar signs around the portion of it that I want to stay in this correct spot. Some people teach you should put it over in front of both parts, in front of the column and the row. The truth is, it only needs to go on the part you need to stay still. So for instance, if I were to copy this down, B doesn't change, right? If I move down, it's still in B. So I only actually need to have it on the 6. But again, most people feel comfortable with the dollar sign being on both. I will demonstrate that it doesn't matter. See that? So now we get accurate results. B3 divided by B6, B4 divided by B6, B5 divided by B6. And I'm going to take the dollar sign off the other one and show you how our results are the exact same still. Okay. So the dollar signs only need to be on what actually needs to stay in place. This is known as an absolute reference. This means it is absolutely going to refer to this cell. The other way which we saw in all the other cases, is known as a relative reference, meaning it will refer to the cell relative to its new position. So if everything had to do with column A, when I copy it over to B, it now only has to do with B. Okay. All right. Something else to note about this, you may recall that I inserted a row here. All these formulas automatically change by that insertion. That will happen too, even if there's an absolute reference. They'll know, wait, you just inserted this new row, so what? This was in cell A1, so it moved down, so now it's in A2. They'll automatically update, so you don't have to worry about that stuff either, which is another reason why it's great to use the cell addresses. Okay. All right. So any questions there? Awesome. So there's two more things that I want to get to. For your homework. And there's more here that I definitely suggest going through and looking at. Go back here. So the first one is that sometimes you'll have information on a different sheet. In your assignment, you'll be asked to have at least 3 sheets of information. So in this case, I have a sheet 1 and a sheet 2. I have some things on sheet 1 that I want to reference over here. Let's say, for instance, I want this column of information to appear here in column F. Oh, I could just copy and paste it, right? Simple enough. Let's say I didn't want to do that though. Because if I copy and paste it, depending on how I paste it, it would just be those same numbers. Maybe instead, I want these two to be connected to each other so that if I make a change here, it'll automatically update on the other sheet. So just to demonstrate, if I copy this and I paste this here, then I come over here and I change this to 89. This still says 90. They're not related to each other directly. So something I can do instead of that is I can use a reference, a cell reference that we did before, but it's a little different when it's on another sheet. So I'll show you why and what it looks like. So when I press equals, I'm going to go over here to sheet 1, pay close attention to the formula bar. Look what it says now. It says sheet 1 with an exclamation point. That's telling that cell that we're still in sheet 2 in, it's telling that cell that you need to go to sheet 1 to get this information. And then I'm going to click on D4. That's where I want it to refer to, D4 in sheet 1. And then I am going to press enter or click enter. This little check mark is called enter. Notice by the screen tip, it says enter. Now that says 89, just like it did on the other one, all right? And if I copy these down, doesn't look like there's a change, but now this one refers to sheet 1 D5, sheet 1 D6, sheet 1 D7. So if I go over here and I say, no, this guy really should be a 90, let's make it a 90. Oh, sorry. Make this a 95 because that changes the color too. Let's go back to sheet 2 and see what happens. Oh, everything updated, right? The number here, the color, because we copied over the conditional formatting too, everything updated on the other sheet. So this can be very powerful, especially if you're doing one thing on one sheet and you need to use results on one sheet on another sheet. So when people are doing like inventories for like their companies, they may take inventory for one type of item, inventory for another, and they have a summary page. Well, that summary page needs a collection of information from both. So this is what they'll do. That way they don't have to go back and update 2 different sheets at a time. They can update one and it'll automatically change itself on the other. Okay, so this is still just the same kind of thing. It's still a relative reference because as I drag this down, the cell address moved down as well. right? So it's still a relative reference. If I had put dollar signs around this, then it would have been an absolute reference. Okay? But sometimes people teach this as a different type of reference. It's really not. Okay. All right. So that's all the cell references. The only other thing I wanted to show you all was how to represent your data. There are other ways to represent your data. There are tons of different ways to do this using tables. And in fact, I'll actually show you. No, I won't do that. I'm going to show you though how to insert a chart to do so, and we'll look at a pivot table later in the future weeks. But let's say I want to insert a chart for these percentages. There are tons of different types of charts. There's even a map here. If you want to somehow make it go to a map of your favorite area. I'm going to click on recommended charts so you can see a couple of different ones. And so there are a couple listed here. And if I actually selected my data first, so say I wanted to just look at the percentages. If I were to go here, it says, oh, the first recommendation coming here is a pie chart. Because generally when people have percentages, pie charts are the ways to represent it. There are other options here as well, though. As you can see, there's a cluster column chart, a bar chart, a line chart, and a line with markers chart on a scatter plot. There are tons of different ones. I think I like the pie chart. That's just me. Most people do like the pie chart, especially when it comes to money, which your assignment is about making your monthly budget. And so here's my pie chart. It looks pretty plain, but as you can see, when I insert something in Excel, I get these new tabs. These are called contextual tabs. And you'll notice it says chart tools at the top. That's because it's a tab for a contextual tab for charts. So we get two. We get design and format. And so I can change the chart style here. I could change the color scheme. That looks ugly. I don't know why I picked that one. Yeah, that's a little better. I could even change the chart's type. Maybe make it 3D. And as I learn more about this, I could also make it move around so that certain things are in front. I could then even maybe select just one of them and make it explode off of the thing. And there's some other things I could do as well. So that's inserting the chart. We won't go into too much detail of some other things that you can do here. I can teach you more if you want to know more. Just ask. You also can find out more in the Excel class, Excel 114 DE. Okay. So those were the two other things I wanted to show you in regards to making sure you're prepared for your assignment. So, actually, let me show you something else, because this could make your assignment have less that you have to do if you do use this. So if you do insert a chart, one other thing that you can do in the Design Contextual tab in the Location group is you can tell your chart to go to a certain place. So you can tell it to go to sheet 1 if you want to, and it moved over to sheet 1, even though it's still referring to things that are in sheet 2. I can also do something crazy and make it a new sheet, give it a name if I want to, so that the chart itself will be its own sheet. And so sometimes when I tell people to move a chart to its own sheet, this is what they do. They'll copy and paste it onto a new sheet. That's not moving it to its own sheet. That's just copying and pasting it. That's just what we just did here, object in. I want it to be its own sheet. And even on this the tip to the side, you can see it literally is the entire sheet, as opposed to you still have the background with the cells in it. So I'm going to show you what this looks like. Notice there's no background of cells. The entire sheet is literally this chart. If I were to print this, it is the entire sheet. If you had just copy and pasted it on the chart, it would only take up a small portion of that sheet. Okay. All right, sweet. So, with all that said, how do you use this information for your monthly budget Excel project? So yes, there is a video to go along with it, but the idea is for you to have 5 lines of items in your monthly budget for monthly expenses. Okay, well, that's like, so examples of that could be like your rent, if you have some, car, how much money you may spend on food, insurance, cable, groceries, going to the movies, internet, whatever you want to do. But you only need 5 items. You need to have something about like pay. So you want to think about how much income do you actually have coming in. You want to have something with a bank account, which could only have your pay in it. Some people, that's how they live. You may have some savings though. So you would have 3 sections in, one for expenses, one for your pay, and one for your bank account. Then you need to have at least 3, that should say sheets. I apologize, it says pages. You should have at least 3 sheets, including a main page and a main sheet and 2 extra sheets that reflect realistic categories that change monthly, such as groceries, utilities, and entertainment. And so an example of that is in the video, but it's similar to what I just showed you here. I am referencing the information that's on this sheet over here. So in the video, the example I give is like, I take, here are the grocery times you go to the grocery store and how much money you spend. I can take a total there, but when I go back to the main sheet that had groceries listed, I'm just referencing that cell that had the total. So for instance, if I took the sum here, I could use that on this other sheet by saying like equals, and now I have the total. And maybe I could call this total from other sheet. Okay. Yours may be groceries, and your groceries is on another sheet. Yours could be entertainment, and your entertainment could be on another sheet because it changes every month. So that's what you need to do there. It says all sheets must reconcile to the main sheet. That just means that, for instance, once again, if you had all your calculations on one sheet for like groceries, it should be referenced in one final sheet. Again, there's an example in the video. So at the end of the day, you should have totals for your expenses, for your pay, for your balance, and a final reconciliation. And so what a reconciliation is, it will take your, well, I actually want to see what you all do for it, but there's an example in the video, but I want you to think about this. How would you find out what you would have at the end of the day? After everything's said and done, after you have paid your expenses, you got your paycheck, and you already had a current balance of some kind, how would things change at the end of the day? What would your new balance be? That is your reconciliation. Okay. This part doesn't really matter. It's just if you want to find other cool statistical stuff, you can. And then it needs to be neat, clean, and have proper spelling and grammar. That's the beginning of all that. Once you've done that, you also should have a chart. So create a chart to represent your expenses. Your chart should be based on your expenses. It should be located on a new sheet. Have an appropriate title, and you should explain what it tells you. Because you could pick a different chart for someone else. I want to know why you picked a column chart versus a pie chart, or why you picked a pie chart instead of a bar chart or a line chart. So
They were gonna have more than 3 sheets.
you say it again?
Hello?
Can you say that again?
So technically we're going to have more than 3 sheets?
No, no, you just need to have at least 3 sheets. That's what the instructions say, at least 3 sheets. I would imagine that you would have more than 3 sheets. Yeah, I've had people that have done this and they only have 1 sheet that goes outside to reconcile information back. Others that have used the chart as a separate one. So, oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, so it's at least 4. In the end, it's at least 4 because the first part is the at least 3, and then you're adding a new one afterwards. That's why in the rubric you'll see it says at least 4. Yep. Right there.
It's like the savings and our income. Do we have to actually use our actual like amount that's in our account and stuff like that, or can we just make those numbers up and it's just our expenses that are
Yeah.
accurate?
Well, all of it can be fake. I don't need to know your personal business. So I have strongly encouraged people to use like real facts for themselves, but then you can make up some stuff later because you could actually use this in real life for yourself, right? You can use this as an actual budget. You can use this to actually see, oh man, I am spending a lot of money towards entertainment every month, or that's like 25% when it's 10% last month. You could actually use this in real life. So, but I, for this assignment, make up stuff. Um, Most of the time, what ends up happening, students use the same data that was given in the video, but then do the chart differently and change the colors and stuff to appropriate whatever they want. I am against that because I feel like you should actually use this because this is real, right? Everyone should learn how to budget or at least know what a budget looks like. So this is something you can use, and instead of paying another company to do it for you, which people buy apps for it, why when you can just like I hope that you all can see how simple it can be to set this up on your own. So instead of paying, $4 a year for someone else to do it, which may not seem a lot, why not just do it yourself? So, yep. Okay.
So the example video will explain everything how to do it and show examples of each step, correct?
Yes, except for the chart, because at the end of the day, for the chart, I just want you to insert a chart and put it on your sheet and tell me why you picked the chart you did.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. The chart title is on there too on the rubric, but that's just right here. Make the change that you need to. Call it whichever you want. Yep. So, good question. Video has everything but the chart on it. Other questions?
Can I still turn in the assignment from the practicing Excel? Because I was also confused
Yes.
on it. Yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
Just like all assignments you all have been able to turn in after the fact. Yep. Yeah. Any other questions?
What if we were like, so like I was confused as well, so I just like tried to do my best and I turned in what I had. Do you want me to I could fix it since I know what I'm doing now and resubmit it?
Yes. Yes. Go and resubmit it.
All right.
Um, as mentioned before, and I put in some of the comments as well whenever for grading for people to go make this change. If you turn something in on time, you have the right to go back and redo. If you legit made an attempt beforehand, if you turn in a blank Excel sheet and on time, and then you want to do something different, then there's not a real attempt there. So yeah. All right. Other questions? No? Okay. Well, in that case, you all have a fabulous weekend. It's Columbus Day weekend. So I'll see you on Monday because we don't have it off. But enjoy making your monthly budget. And let me know if you have any questions. I will try to get some other things graded by Friday. Yep.
Thank you for your help.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you all for your feedback with the form evaluation and for the beginning of class today. That was really helpful. So
Of course.
thanks.
You have a good weekend.
Thank
You
you.
too.
Have a good weekend.
You too. Edwin, did you have a question?